In this video, what seemingly seems to be a bad injector along with a valve adjustment quickly turns into an owner-operator's worst nightmare when a certain valve cannot be adjusted. In this video, folks, we're going to be discussing valve recession, how to measure it, what it can mean when it is out of specification, and what that can end up looking like. But in this particular case, the news keeps getting worse and worse for this owner-operator's logging truck, and you'll just have to wait and see exactly what we find out. But all I can say is some of the repairs are not going to be cheap. Hey guys, Josh with the Update Channel, and I probably need a haircut. Back in the van here, not working on it though. We are going to look at a 5EK, which is a 34.6E. Here, close to the shop, and I think he's a mile away or so. Anyway, he says it's acting weird. It's been missing. It seems to do it when it's warm out more than when it's cold. Doesn't know really what's going on, so we're going to get hooked up to it, and let's see what we can find out. So this is the customer's engine here, 5EK. We're checking the fuel pressure here because his complaint is it's got an intermittent miss. It's been going on for over a year. Generally under heavy load, when he's hauling logs, it will seem to miss like a dead cylinder. Then it'll just kick back on. He said he's hit it with a temp gun. Looks like number 3 cylinder to him seems weaker. So what we're going to do a cutout test and see what the heck is going on. Pretty weak too, 5. That one's kind of weak too. Yeah, you got a few there. Like one's definitely stronger than the other ones. There it did a little bit, I guess. That's weird. Yeah, initially it wasn't doing anything. Whoa. What the heck now? So with it cutting in and out like that, we went on a road test here, and we're looking to see with it under load if it would totally miss. And it does. Under full load, even though it'll be driving normally under heavy acceleration, number 3 will just decide to just cut out all of a sudden. You know, anything where you have it intermittently completely cutting out and then firing pretty much tells you folks it's not really a mechanical problem. Generally, you're going to find an injector, something like that. Since no codes though, suspect a mechanical problem inside the injector, so we went ahead and replaced number 3 injector. It was original with 1.3 million miles on it. Doing an overhead though after, which is a good idea, and I found that the intake valves on number 3 had very little gap at all, and these are set to 15 thousandths, but if you notice, the 15 thousandths feeler gauge doesn't go under it. Goes about half under the rocker and then it just stops. That's with it backed off also. I had it backed off all of the way. It will not slide under there. Now I've heard of this before, but surprisingly I've never ran into this before. Now having just replaced that number 3 injector there, I figured, okay, maybe I got something out of line here, something misplaced, something out of order. Although generally if something's held up or not in the correct position, it's going to be looser, not tighter. And I hadn't loosened any of the adjuster nuts for any of the rockers, so very unusual. But just want to make sure what I think is going on here isn't my fault or something related to that. So what we're going to do here is pull the Jake housings. What I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the bridge from 4 to 3 on the intake. I'm also going to swap the rocker from 4 to 3 on the intake as well, just to make sure we don't want something weird with a rocker arm or a valve bridge. Those are very simple items, but it'd be really crappy if we thought we need to pull the cylinder head, and it just turns out that there was something wrong with those. And his engine's in really good shape from what I could tell. The rocker arms, the camshaft, everything showed no real wear for 1.3 million miles. And that's logging truck miles, folks. You got to figure logging trucks are per mile harder on their engines in general than on highway applications. So before we put these back together, how about a little destruction of the week? This week's instruction of the week comes from John Goldsmith, and he just said, quick oil change. So what you're looking through here, folks, is an oil pan off of a Cat engine, and he had pulled the main bearing off. Apparently, the oil pan failed, and they kept running it, and that's what your main bearing looks like. I have kind of a, not a destruction, but a item that we're selling here. Well, I'm not selling it. My buddy Derek, who makes stickers, is making a Depth Ape official stickers, folks. It is Screaming Goat approved, and I'll put a link in the description here if you want to get one for yourself. They're about 4.5 by 4.5 inches. So what we're doing here is we are just reassembling after swapping the bridge and after swapping the rocker arms there just to make sure. And one thing that's kind of weird is he's got exhaust rocker arms on all of the intake and exhaust valves here. You could, if you were observant of that, you would have noticed that they've got those flat spots for the jakes there. Not that that's a problem. If it was, they would be all messed up, but they're all reading the same except for that number 3. So what do I think's going on? Well, it looks like valve recession, folks. And unlike the economic style of recession, this one is when the valve is wearing into the seat to the point that it is changing the height on the valves, which will give you guessed it, less gap between your rocker arm and your valve bridge there. Because the gap, which is only 15 thousandths of an inch, is basically made up by the distance between the bridge and the rocker arm. So if your valves are moving up, you're losing that gap area there. So I have swapped the bridges, and we're going to retorque everything here and see if we can get a decent measurement now. I'm kind of hopeful, although I suspect there's not going to be any change, folks. Now, what is surprising is all the injectors, except for number 3 now, are original with this many miles. These EUI style injectors seem to run pretty much forever. Now, I'd be saying, well, Josh, do you think that the valve problem is what was causing the intermittent miss? No. Your valve recession there, it wouldn't be causing an intermittent firing and then not firing at all. We didn't have any sort of popping or any weird noise, just the dead cylinder intermittently. So what we're doing here is we're just putting air to the cylinder with the injector, pulled it back out, and just kind of tells you if you've got potentially, which I don't think we have, is a bent valve head or something like that, which something damaging the valves would also show weird numbers on your valve adjustment potentially. But it's holding air fine, which is what I figured because it was, as we said, intermittent before. So at this point, I'm like, okay, let's take some measurements. Let's see what the heck's going on here. I did not have my micrometer depth mic with me. I did have this vernier caliper, though, so not a super precise measurement. We'll say it's off by probably about 10 thousandths variance. But what I'm doing here is I'm measuring from the bridge to the head on number 4, and then I'm measuring from the bridge to the head on number 3. And I'm getting quite a bit of difference. Depending on how I measure it, we're about 50 thousandths, 50 to 70 thousandths. But this caliper, like I said, you're going to get a lot more variance than you would with a micrometer. So yes, something's different. So what's different? Well, the one is much higher than the other. Now, what's the specifications? Well, I can't actually find any for the exact valve height we're measuring here. At least on the Cat system. I did find that valves generally vary between 20 and 30 thousandths on the valve recession from Cat, and we've got way more than that. So we're suspecting to pull the head here, so this is the next day. I got my official depth mic here, about 4 inches. You can see there I've got my gantry crane all out on the tables here getting ready to set up, and we'll discuss this a little bit more, but we're going to do some much more accurate measurements here. So what are we measuring here? The same thing we were yesterday, except from the rotocoil. 3.092 inches of height there. You might be saying, well, you need to see what the other ones are. And this one's at 3.075, so about 20 thousandths variance between the two. But what about these ones on 5 that were easy to adjust? 3.020, so 70 thousandths difference. That's a lot. Customer got the new head, and that one measures at 2.992. So yeah, we're almost 1/10 of an inch higher. 1/10 of an inch higher from a new head measuring the valve recession here to the head we have here. So yeah, that is a lot of difference. Definitely a problem there. So at this point, since we can't adjust it, valve recession's looking pretty bad. Customers say, you know what, let's go ahead and pull the head. We need to find what the heck's going on. And I agree. I think that's probably the best procedure we can do there. So you might be saying, well, Josh, you work out of a van. How are you going to pull at this 500-pound cylinder head? And if you didn't see there, I got this little gantry crane. I shouldn't say little. It's 12 foot by 12 foot. It's adjustable. And it actually fits even the main I-beam here inside the van, although I could put it on the roof rack. It's a pain in the butt. And yeah, with another person there, I can assemble it in about 10 minutes. I can do it myself in about maybe 30 minutes, a lot harder. But it enables me to do stuff like this. Pull a cylinder head, pull a cooling package, basically do everything you could do with a crane outside of pulling an entire engine package. You'd need a very heavy-duty gantry crane for that. Not only that, this enables me to not have to run a PTO, not have to run anything. I had an engine where the customer had pulled the truck in nose first into their shop, and even if I had a big service truck with a crane, I would not have been able to set the head on their truck again. Luckily, with this crane setup, it's totally movable around, and yeah, it worked out really good. So I just have a manual chainfall here. Everything here is rated at 2,000 pounds, which is much more than the cylinder head assembly weighs. And yeah, it enables me to pick up the cylinder head here. So having some trouble here with the head. Didn't want to pick up really straight. It was picking up the back, and then it was kind of binding on the forward dowel. So what I ended up having to do was just try and kind of reposition it. I'm going to get a chain hoist here and get the front end up higher. And if I can get the front end up higher, we're able to swing it out of the way and then set it on what looks to be just a piece of plywood, where the customer had these metal sawhorses that he said he actually puts the rear end of the truck on when he's doing suspension work. So pretty heavy duty enough to put a cylinder head on, that's for sure. Obviously this is time lapse, folks, but yeah, as you can see, it's got a trolley, and it's also on wheels, locking casters, so you can move it around. Pretty cool little deal. Customer there in his shop said he didn't mind being on there as long as his vehicle's getting fixed. So he was actually quite helpful. He's been helping me the entire time. And checking out our head gasket here, I'll do kind of a quick inspection of that head gasket here in a minute, but might find some other problems. Yeah, so we're just going to set our head down here, and then we are going to go look at Mr. Head Gasket, which is going to tie in with some other problems. So this is our head gasket front. That's number 1 cylinder. Moving our way back to number 5. Crap. That's not good. You see the darkness between the bolt holes there? Not only that, the fire ring is damaged, it's disintegrating. So we've got a problem here with this head gasket. This is kind of the problem on these older engines with the higher mileage. Sometimes you get into something simple. Like we started with a valve adjustment here, folks, and a bad injector. And now we've got the cylinder head off. Not only that, now that we have the cylinder head off, we have found that there is head gasket fire ring damage, which generally means sunk liners, which we did find. 5 and 6 we had a couple zeros, so he said, well, let's pull it down. Look what we found. This is some of the worst cavitation pitting I've ever seen on a cat. These are super deep. They're almost, I mean, he may have been getting pretty soon coolant right through those liners. We've got some really big ones here on the other side. I'll show you here in a second. Like I said, some of the worst pitting I've seen on a, well, this, I was going to say C15, but this is a 3406E. Pretty similar though, but yeah. A lot of damage, we found it, and we are getting it put back together though, folks. Hope you enjoyed this teardown, this troubleshooting. Thought you'd find it interesting. Thanks for watching.